Liberty Nation with Tim Donner.
Say what? Say what? Say what? One more time.
We commence the proceedings with our signature segment, Say What, where we roll out a virtual assembly line of wacky, astonishing, damnable, and ultimately revealing things uttered by politicians and the chattering class. And no doubt you uttered those very words, say what? When you woke up Friday morning to discover the president and first lady have the COVID. And the questions were many, the drama at peak level.
Who else was exposed in the West Wing? Will the president's senior advisors and the vice president also go into quarantine? The campaign is totally frozen in time, and the president had a very crowded schedule of campaign events over the coming days. Also, the presidential debates. We're supposed to have 2 more debates. We're supposed to have a vice presidential debate. Will those go on? Obviously, all of that uncertain.
This was a code red moment for the U.S. government before we even had these diagnoses from FLOTUS and POTUS. This may be the most dangerous moment that the U.S. government has ever faced. The president is suffering from a deadly virus. This feels like something we should be watching on an episode of Homeland.
A deadly virus. The average age of death among those who've died with COVID is 78, most with underlying conditions. President Trump is 74 with a potentially troubling condition. And on MSNBC, Dr. Vin Gupta sounded the alarm and unsurprisingly took the opportunity to blame the president for his disregard of COVID protocols.
He has a significant comorbidity, a risk factor, in addition to his age, which is being overweight. The combination of the two, I've cared for several patients in the ICU who have that double whammy. They're older and they're overweight. They have a bad trajectory, meaning they start developing shortness of breath or a cough or fever. So this is a very serious situation for the president. Perhaps the way he's been behaving and messaging has been wrong, and now he's unfortunately bearing the brunt of that consequence.
Well, that was a typical reaction in the elite media. And like all the other unprecedented crises the people, the voters, have been forced to process in 2020, they will now have to figure the president's physical condition into the mix when deciding how to vote. But the election campaign will continue in some form depending on how Trump gets through this period of quarantine. And at the heart of the debate over this election is the question of who controls the two parties and the prevailing ideologies of Donald Trump and Joe Biden. While we know what Trump is all about, he tells us every day in every way. How about Biden? An historically moderate candidate by Democrat standards who's been all but held hostage by the rising tide of left-wing progressives in his party. When you vote for Joe Biden, what are you voting for? The Democrat nominee said he won his party's nomination because he was not a socialist like Bernie Sanders on many issues, but particularly health care. But Trump was having none of it in Tuesday night's debate.
Biden wanted to allow people to have private insurance still. They can. They do. They will under my proposal.
It's not what you've said, and it's not what your party has said.
That is simply
your party
a lie.
Doesn't say it. Your party wants to go socialist medicine.
My party is
and
me.
Socialist
right
healthcare.
Now, I am
and
the
they're going to dominate
party.
you, Joe. You know that.
I am the Democratic Party right now.
Trump says the left will dominate Biden, who in turn says he is the Democratic Party right now, even though he's adopted positions far to the left of his own expressed ideology over almost 50 years. Only the voters can decide whether Biden is his own man or not. And only they can decide what to make of this much debated question and answer by Trump on whether he would condemn white supremacists. And he ridiculed the idea that the rampant mob violence in cities across the land was anything but a product of far-left extremism.
Who would you like me to condemn?
White supremacists and right
Proud Boys, stand back and stand by. But I'll tell you what. Somebody's got to do something about Antifa and the left, because this is not a right-wing problem. This is a left-wing. This is a left-wing problem.
White supremacists. Antifa's an idea, not an organization.
Oh, you got to be
not
kidding.
militia.
So Trump tells a right-wing group to stand back, But Biden actually denies the very existence of the domestic terrorist organization identifying as Antifa. Go ahead and ask any of the people who saw their communities destroyed whether the Antifa organization exists. But if there was a single soundbite from the debate which Trump supporters would like to resonate and have legs, it revolved around the number 47. And former Bush 43 Press Secretary Harry Fleischer used it to deliver a devastating critique on Biden's refusal to say whether he'd pack the Supreme Court with more progressives if he became president.
In 47 months, I've done more than you've done in 47 years, Joe.
When he said, I've done more in 47 months than you've done in 47 years, that was a pretty good way to sum everything up. And I still think that Joe Biden is leaving himself very vulnerable because he just refuses to take a stand out of weakness. He acknowledges it. I won't give you an answer on court packing or on filibuster because I don't want my answer to be the issue. What kind of leader or statesman answers a question like that?
Indeed, the question of leadership is what voters must ultimately decide during these trying times. But leadership qualities in policy debates may in the end shrink in comparison with the fight over the actual outcome of the election already being waged by both campaigns before, during, and after the debate. Trump touting what he calls a scandalous distribution of unsolicited mail-in ballots and relying on the Supreme Court and the prospective new Justice Amy Coney Barrett to bring it to a final resolution. The last Democrat nominee saying a while back that Biden should never concede, and senior Democrat on the Senate Judiciary Committee, Dick Durbin, taking issue with Hillary.
If it's a fair election, I am 100% on board. But if I see tens of thousands of ballots being manipulated, I can't go along with that. Hey, they found ballots in a waste paper basket 3 days ago, and they all had the name military ballots. They were military. They all had the name Trump on them.
I think it's better if you go before the election because I think this scam that the Democrats are pulling, it's a scam. This scam will be before the United States Supreme Court. And I think having a 4-4 situation is not a good situation.
Joe Biden should not concede under any circumstances because I think this is going to drag out, and eventually I do believe he will win if we don't give an inch.
I disagree with Hillary Clinton. I respect her, I like her, but I think she's just flat out wrong. If we are going to maintain a democracy, peaceful transition through an election is the only way to do it. Whoever the winner is, if it is clear and legal, that should be announced and the other party should concede.
It is actually conceivable that the loser of this election will never concede because counting the expected deluge of mail-in ballots may take days or weeks, and courts in crucial swing states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, have extended the deadlines for counting ballots to days past the election.